All right, and now we're going to bring Ray Katz on, who's been one of the most prolific and providers of some of the most interesting data that we get to see at our summits. And he's going to be giving an update on NIL, or as Tony Pace used to always bring forward, NIL plus I, because the influencer piece is so much. So Ray, welcome. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much, Frank. Always a pleasure and a privilege to be part of any and all MASB events, publications, etc. And this whole NIL area has continued to evolve. Just want to give a couple of minutes of background. I know about 16 months ago, I was on a panel with Mike Zorb, hosted by and led by Tony Pace, Mike Zorb from Open Doors, and we've continued to work very closely with them and have stayed on top of everything going on. I am Chief Operating Officer of Collegiate Sports Management Group and also on faculty teaching sports media at Columbia University in the grad school, continuing at School of Professional Studies. The reason that's so interesting and important is because athletes and their name, image, and likeness have become a very good media activation vehicle for a number of sponsors. And I've seen about a half dozen great case studies, and we were personally involved in 3 of them. But the nexus of NIL and sponsorship has been really compelling, as there is so much media clutter and fragmentation of media that athletes have become a great way through their social media primarily to activate sponsorships. We've been part of that. We work primarily outside of the Power 5, which actually Division II, Division III, and the FCS division of Division I constitute more athletes, more alums than the Power 5 conferences, and definitely an underutilized asset. However, given all that and given all the buzz about this, it may seem surprising that only 17% of student athletes have participated in name, image, and likeness. And part of that is because, one, the median deal size is fairly small, so not necessarily worth the time of athletes that aren't really concerned about money. And B, also, it's been depressed in the Power 5 schools where collectives, and there are over 200 of them, have supplanted name, image, and likeness deals, which has become a way over the table for donors to provide money to student athletes to get them to play at a sport. One prime example of this is Bryce Young, who purportedly made over $1 million in name, image, and likeness across his 2 years at University of Alabama, first 2 years. And what's interesting about that is he only had 27,000 social followers. So clearly it was a little bit of a pay-to-play element to it, and that's what collectives have become to a great extent. That's going to be regulated a bunch moving forward, and that has really factored in both the recruiting of high school grads as well as the ever-growing transfer portal, which I'll touch on. And the athletic director at Texas Tech indicated that about 40% of their athletes have had NIL deals. The Texas schools have been particularly aggressive in this area. Some of that is through the collective. With regards to what kind of athletes, it's not just about Power 5 football and basketball players. Here's an example of a terrific University of Oregon volleyball player, Gloria Mutiri, who has done NIL deals and Open Doors, the leader in collegiate NIL, and frankly, the leader in all NIL. They've been doing it for over a decade, just starting 18 months ago in college. But they make it very easy. The athlete literally just checks a phone, clicks a box, maybe does a quick social post, but it's all really set up for them. And Open Doors has done a terrific job making this a democratic process for athletes at all levels, right through Division III, junior colleges, and yes, even high school. What's been interesting is, largely because so much of this has to do with collectives and prominent alums, local NIL deals have far surpassed deals with national brands, which has been really interesting. Dunkin' Donuts did something pretty cool nationally, working through Learfield, also a partner of ours in certain arenas. We do some of the media for the conferences and schools that they sell. But what's been really interesting is that they did a deal with Dunkin' Donuts across 24 markets with 24 different athletes. That was my vision as to how this was going to turn out. So, for example, America runs on Dunkin'. The top student athletes run on Dunkin'. That helps power them in order to succeed both on the court or on the field and in the classroom. Not surprisingly, apparel was the leading category. It's also the biggest sponsorship category for colleges, with soft drink being second. But what's interesting is there hasn't been that much activity in soft drink. Restaurants have been 14% of name, image, and likeness, with quick service restaurants being about half of that. Some pretty good NFT deals, which hasn't really, again, taken off the way it was supposed to, leading the technology category. Financial services is top 5. And kind of surprisingly, at least to me, auto has been a very small 4% of the total, in part probably because the auto industry is just slow moving in general in terms of changing and pivoting and doing marketing in a different direction, in a different fashion. Collectives, I alluded to collectives. This is basically where a bunch of donors get together with one person leading it. They put together a whole pile of money and essentially go and recruit players. They use it as a recruiting tool. There's a lot of angst. Syracuse just lost their starting center, for example. He's going somewhere else. Michigan, Hunter Dickinson, their starting center is out there as well. Caleb Love, North Carolina, is going to Michigan to a great extent because of the basketball team really is what's been powering the collective over there. There are 201 collectives. That's about almost half of Division I. And NCAA has published some guidance and is doing a lot more regarding third-party involvement. As you can imagine, this can become a quite unsavory area and is one that's actually slowing down the organic and endemic growth of name, image, and likeness. Proceed. Athlete compensation. The average compensation is $1,300 in year one. That's really deceptive. The truth of the matter is the median deal is $65. The $1,300 is brought up by A, collective numbers, and then B, the amazing young ladies, the Cavender twins, who just concluded a final Elite 8 season at University of Miami. Their deals were significantly larger than this, with over 3 million TikTok followers. So I like to look at median as more representative than averages, one could imagine. And this is just a great case study. A Unilever, behind their degree brand, created a really strong national campaign with 244 earned media placements across a range of athletes, 1.1 billion earned media impressions. And so pretty much regardless of how you chop that up, it's a couple to a few $1 million in earned media value. That's pretty solid, even for a Unilever, in terms of one marketing technique that they employ. Rob Master did a tremendous job at that as CMO of that great company. Bob Lynch, CEO of Sponsor United, another partner of ours, has analyzed thousands of sponsored posts from student athletes. And what's been really interesting is that the engagement of student athlete sponsored posts has been more than double that of professional athletes. And part of that is because of the passion that individual fans have for their colleges and their college sports teams, and in many cases even exceeds that of their pro sports teams and pro athletes, who increasingly are sort of mercenary free agents. Demographics. I think the great thing here is that it's the participation in name, image, and likeness has been extremely representative of the overall NCAA athlete demographic. So it's been incredibly diverse, incredibly inclusive, and incredibly equitable. In fact, in many cases, the women's basketball players are doing better than the men's basketball players. When you eliminate football, which is only a male sport, you can see that females actually outperform males a little bit in this exciting new area. And then social media is about 72% of it. As I said, Open Doors makes it pretty simple to do this. The three kinds of activities are your basic influencer type activity, where the brand simply pays a student athlete to post. Student athletes promoting their own brand, which is great. They should have been able to do that from the get-go. That is not reflective of any unsavory commercial activity. If they can design clothing or whatever, or merchandise, they should be able to capitalize as a regular non-athlete student could. And then the use of social media like Cameo to directly sell content and directly sell product. So again, endorsement, appearances, instruction, and merch sales are the top arenas here. And that's really it. It's going to be an interesting next year. It's going to be an interesting next 18 months as we work our way into and through the 23, 24, and 24, 25 season. We can skip this. I can talk about transfer portal all day, but the transfer portal has really been a big driver, unfortunately, or has been driven to a great extent by name, image, and likeness rather than athletes getting opportunities to play and best exhibit and prepare for the next level and or get a better education and prepare for life. Although I will say a young man named Justin Mutz has taken great advantage of his 6 years in college. And I'm not saying that facetiously. He has received 2 graduate degrees and is now working on his second undergraduate degree at Virginia Tech. And he transferred from Delaware to Virginia Tech in order to pursue certain particular majors. A big bonus was his basketball game evolved greatly, and he should be either a terrific basketball player in Europe or a terrific business person and or academic here in the United States. So with that, I'm going to simply open the floor for questions.
Let's see if we have any hands that will come up. If not, I'm going to ask one that I'm very curious of, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
So one of the things I was fascinated about with all the research that you had done on NIL, along with the other members of the MASB Sponsorship Accountability team, is that the schools have taken on such a responsibility or accountability to give entrepreneurial courses on media, and things of that nature, and actually use that so that the students are versed and in many cases they seem to be a much safer bet than professionals, the older professionals who haven't had that training. And I was wondering how, from a marketer's perspective, what do you think that's going to come out on the back end on the professional side? Do you think that learning from NIL will therefore make professional sponsorship more valuable?
It's interesting. It should. I mean, I think the challenge is that college students that are in the median of $65 for posts, they're trying to really learn how to increase their following and how to do more, how to do better, and how to get better compensated for it. I think it's just terrific that schools have done this. On the pro side, the challenge is that they're making so much money for playing that you'll have athletes say things like, well, I'm not going to get out of bed for less than $100,000, which Ezekiel Elliott said to me personally. And with that in mind, most athletes are just not nearly as good a deal, and they're not going to be nearly as good a deal. And frankly, they can get in a lot more trouble because they have a lot more money than college athletes do. So I'd like to say it was going to translate. I think it's going to be more happening over time as these current college athletes become either pro athletes or they go pro in something other than sports and can still continue their NIL activities. I mean, at University of Nebraska, where Blake Lawrence went, some of the most prolific NIL activity is amongst Nebraska alums, whether they're coaches like Scott Frost or business people, or doing whatever Johnny Rodgers is currently doing in his post business career days. But yeah, I think it's all exciting and it's all great stuff and long overdue. And I think brands really need to view this as almost a subset of social media and a subset of endorsement and figure out how to best allocate budget towards this effectively and efficiently.
All right. Well, we do have Joanna coming on. Joanna?
Yes, I just wanted to say, not really a question, is thank you so much, Ray. That was, really, really interesting. And I think you've making a huge contribution to the sponsorship work we've been doing.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for your amazing leadership and direction as well.
All right, well, I see no other questions. So thank you, Ray. It's, as always, very informative.
Thank you so much, Frank. Thanks for doing such a great job with this overall event as well.